to the Lions winning 47-9 against the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, I don't even really know where to start with this, considering the Lions were so dominant, and we've been down this road before of where did Dallas go. I think the biggest one was, what was that play that Goff threw? There was a little trick play to the O lineman, and I was like, wow, Dan Campbell really must hate Dallas. This is getting like, it's just rubbing all sorts in any wounds. Yeah. I guess the main thing to touch upon there was obviously, unfortunately, Aiden Hutchinson season-ending injury. Marcus Davenport hurt his elbow earlier in the season against the Cardinals. The main thing I want to ask both of you is, we could sit here and talk about how great the Lions are, sit here and talk about, how impressive Jared Goff and the offense was, but I sort of earlier was thinking to myself, they're definitely going to make the playoffs. They're still probably everyone's picked to win the North, but we talk about defense winning championships, and when you don't have Aiden Hutchinson in the playoffs, I think that's going to hurt them down the line. I don't know if it's
That's what I've got written down. Basically, if I was a Lions fan and I could go back in time and change the outcome, I'd rather lose that game and keep Hutch, because if they'd lost yesterday, I think they still win the division. Now, do they win the division? I don't know. I even though the Vikings have been unbeaten and have looked really good, if they were playing yesterday, I would have absolutely made the Lions my favorite for that. If they were playing next week, probably not now. Probably not, because he is the Lions' best player. Not necessarily the most important player, because I think if Jared Goff got injured, I think then you've got major problems, because, that's the quarterback. But the thing with the Lions is, if you put their starters up against pretty much any other team, I think they're as good as anyone. Once you look at their depth, then it makes me a little bit nervous. They are very top-heavy, and I think that's by design. They have been prepared to pay a lot of money. To go back to another player that the Bears decided, that's not a premium position for us. We're not going to pay that sort of contract. David Montgomery, who has been absolutely spectacular for the Lions. But I don't think the Bears are thinking, oh God, why didn't we keep him? Because he was productive in Chicago. They just decided, we are not going to pay that second contract. We can get another one of you in the draft if we need one. You can go and earn all that big money. And the Lions have done that with quite a lot of players. Like, these are the pieces we want for this Super Bowl window, and we will pay what it takes. And it can be an effective strategy. But if all of a sudden you lose one of those pieces and everyone else is kind of a bargain basement sort of player, it's very difficult to replace them. And when you're trying to replace someone who I would say right now is Defensive Player of the Year, you've got an issue. He's probably not coming back this season. Maybe he's back for the playoffs. I wouldn't bank on it, unfortunately. I think he's done. They absolutely destroyed the Cowboys yesterday, but it won't be what's remembered for Detroit Lions fans. The Cowboys fans will look at it all very differently. They've got a whole set of issues going on. But for the Lions, it will be the fact that Hutch is gone. What now?
Yeah, Fred, with Hutchinson done for the season, the only it sounds weird to say the only positive I could find when you've beat the Cowboys 47-9 was Jameson Williams. I mean, again, a player where people forget because of obviously what's happened, that he's only 23. But how much of a difference maker has he been? Because, Amon-Ra St. Brown had a quiet game but got his touchdown. Like Ben said, we speak about Montgomery and Gibbs, but he's a guy who's just been almost a breath of fresh air to the offense. Obviously, stretch defenses, and he gets his opportunities, but creates them for other players as well. I guess that's the spark now for them. And in terms of the offense, is going to have to carry them a lot more so than they would have hoped going forward.
This team will ultimately may become a team where it's like, we can't beat you, but we'll outscore you. We'll just put up so many points that you can't keep up. That may be their MO. That ultimately doesn't get you to a Super Bowl, unfortunately, or a conference championship, but it can get you to the playoffs quite easily. So I'm worried about them losing Hutchinson. I mean, we're going to ask the question on tomorrow's show about, do the Lions pull the trigger and go and trade for somebody who's maybe in the market, which I think they could well do, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, this offense with Jameson Williams, Ross St. Brown, they have got a design, haven't they? They have a blueprint for what type of player they want. They want people who are creative, who are gritty, and who are hungry for it. And Jameson Williams missed that first season. and then it was injury laden on the second, and then it was a slow start to the beginning of his career, and his career is only just really beginning now, I suppose. And he's looking great for it. And they've just obviously re-signed David Montgomery to a 2-year extension, so he's obviously in their long-term plan alongside Jahmyr Gibbs. They've got a hell of an O-line. We've seen these teams before. The Ravens were this sort of team a few years ago where they were like, we're just going to outscore you, like while we're building our defense and getting a few more players in and figuring out what we are as an identity, getting back our identity, I suppose, the Baltimore Ravens. So that might be what they turn into. Real kick in the gut. I think Ben's absolutely spot on that you will look back at this and think we could have won 10-3. And if we'd kept, if we had Hutch, it doesn't matter about the scoreline at this point for the Lions. It matters about losing such an influential player like that. But sticky situation for the Cowboys at the minute.
Well, just to go back to Hutch. I mean, there will be players out there who will be trade bait, who would think
thinking about them.
They'll feel like if they're on a team that they know is heading for a rebuild. Let's say you're someone like Jadeveon Clowney, and obviously he's not at Hutch's level and he's a lot older. But if you're someone like that and you think, I could go for a spot on a team that's got its Super Bowl window wide open, and I might win a ring, and I'm going to be surrounded by other good players. But the problem is, it's a seller's market, because people will know if once the Lions start making inquiries, it's like, oh, the Lions must be desperate because they don't want to lose a season because of one player. And I'm not saying, oh, well, the Lions can't win a Super Bowl because they haven't got Hutch, but he is their best player, so it is crucial. But you are not gonna, even if you're not like even a conference rival, you're not going to let someone go on the cheap, because if you are rebuilding, your whole thing is, I've got to get plenty of value. And if they overpay, then they've got to kind of pay that cost further down the line. The Lions have been really good drafting, but something like if they have to give up a second rounder for somebody, that's someone who is probably going to be a starter, a long-term starter on a cheaper contract. All of a sudden, they've got someone who's not going to be a long-term starter on an expensive contract. And it all causes a problem further down the line. I hope the Lions can figure it out, because they've been so much fun to watch. And it would be a sickener if that just unfortunate injury ends up costing them a shot at it.
I was just thinking then, whilst you both mentioned about trades, how funny would it be if they went and got Trayvon Walker, considering that he was picked before it? I mean, the Jags, if they lose next week, or even just trying to scramble my brain for players.
That'd be an absolute blockbuster, wouldn't it? That one.
Yeah, something like Uche from us, though. The Patriots, we're in a rebuild, and he had a double-digit sack season a few years back. There probably are players out there, like Ben said, that they could get on the cheap. But yeah, there's also a couple of comments from Kerry that I haven't read out. She said earlier on, I felt like I was at Soldier Field. So we weren't the only ones. And saying, Dallas losing always makes me chuckle. I feel more for Tom Brady having to watch that bleep week in, week out.
Well, yeah, that says something about the broadcast schedules. Yeah, the Cowboys. Have you ever seen, really, considering not many people were saying, oh, the Cowboys, they're my Super Bowl pick. It's not like people going into the season thinking, oh, they're as good as the 49ers or they're as good as the Cowboys. Literally no one was saying those things. But for a team that's 3-3, so they're still at 500, how many people are looking at that team thinking, this is an absolute disaster? Do they need to have a total rebuild? And they're 3-3. They're 3-3, and people are feeling like it's all over for them. But nothing has really felt right. And they've lost every home game this season. They lost a home game in the playoffs last season. So it's something silly like 4 home defeats in a row. It is bad, and it looks bad for McCarthy. I think that was their biggest defeat at Jerry World. It was humiliating, and the Lions did seem to be trying to rub their noses in it. It wasn't like, let's pull the starters and not get anyone hurt. It was, no, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna score points. We're gonna do this.
Yeah.
They were trying to humiliate them, and I'm absolutely fine with that. It felt petty. I'm fine with it because they just felt like there was a bit of an edge there, and I liked it. And I think the Lions really wanted to make that statement, and the Cowboys just then couldn't stop them. So the Cowboys pulled their starters because it was like, well, this is game over anyway. I don't know where the Cowboys, go from here. Even though that's a weak division, they just don't look right, and they haven't looked right all season. That game against the Steelers could have easily lost that. Their best looking win of the year was against the Browns, and now we know that the Browns are terrible. So, what are the Cowboys right now? What is the point of the Cowboys right now? Like,
that's so funny because that's what you were saying. Like, they're 3-3, they're 500. The biggest difference between them and every other 3-3 team is they don't have an identity. What's their identity? Like, what? Like you said, what are they? What's the point? Like, is it what CeeDee Lamb? That's your identity, CeeDee Lamb. Like, you can't run the ball. Your defense isn't playing well at all. Pretty much the rumor in the air is you're not going to pay or extend Micah Parsons, or you may or may not. Then he goes. I mean, what are you, CeeDee Lamb, and that's it. Like, it's that's what must be frustrating for the Cowboys fans at the minute, is not having that identity. And then, like, we've pulling back to the Commanders, a team that, like we said, if they don't make the playoffs, the Commanders fans are still going to be really happy because that team's got an identity. Team's got direction. This team at the minute, zero direction, zero identity, and that's the biggest thing that frustrates fans, I think.
Yeah, spot on.
I feel like Ben read my paper though, because I wrote down Prescott threw 2 interceptions in the worst home loss since 1988 for the Cowboys, who became the first team since at least 2000 to trail by 14 or more points at halftime in 4 consecutive games on their home field, playoffs included. Yeah, which sets me up for the stat.